Hello and welcome to Workforce Wisdom. I'm your host, Christy Bray, Chief Strategy Officer at PracticeLink. This podcast focuses on the latest trends in healthcare recruitment while showcasing innovative strategies, success stories, and fresh perspectives affecting the healthcare workforce. Whether you are an experienced recruitment professional or just starting out, this podcast aims to help you discover how experts are reshaping the industry, leveraging technology, and fostering inclusive hiring practices. Today's episode of Workforce Wisdom, Smart Money, Stronger Workforce, How SavvyFi is Transforming Recruitment Through Financial Wellness. Welcome, Jason and Yavi.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
Roughly 15 years ago, Jason recognized the need for a tech-enabled approach to allowing borrowers and employers to optimally manage student loan debt and the opportunity to serve a broader population. Jason has served as a national expert and panelist for schools, hospitals, and partners on the increasingly complex and evolving topic of student loan debt, best practices, and federal loan legislation. He's advised tens of thousands of physicians and healthcare clinicians on approximately $5 billion in outstanding student loan debt. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you. Nice to see you,
Nice
Christy.
to see you again. Jovica has spent over a decade in finance and the benefits space, serving as an advisor, consultant, and senior leader across multiple SaaS organizations. He is currently part of the SavvyFi team, leading growth initiatives and driving sales and new business to scale the company's financial impact across workforces. Welcome again. Let's just dive right into this fun topic of debt. There's no real way to softly go into that one, I think, guys.
So fun.
Yeah. So Jason, you've been a longtime advocate for student loan borrowers, especially in healthcare. I know that we have known each other even before I lived in Tennessee, so for quite a while. Can you walk us through your journey and what led you to found organizations like Doctors Without Borders and SavvyFi?
Yeah, believe it or not, I did not study student loans as a major in college. I just simply had them. Early in my career, I was in commercial insurance for several years. And in 2010, I had the opportunity to join a student loan lending organization that was the year that the Obama administration nationalized student loans. So loans started coming from the Department of Education versus private lenders like Sallie Mae and Citibank, Discover, Wells Fargo. And there was the need for guidance because loan servicers were often acting in their own interest in terms of providing borrowers advice or not giving them advice at all. So there was a space open there for advocacy and support for borrowers, particularly as public service loan forgiveness became available, the income-driven plans started coming to the surface. So I was working with schools and hospitals to do student loan best practices, education at graduation, throughout doctor's journey through residency and fellowship as they transition to practice. And then 5 or 6 years ago, employers started coming to me and recruiters. I think that's when you and I started talking. That was probably even more than 5 or 6 years ago, close to 10. But recruiters and employers started talking to us about trying to understand the student loan marketplace and what federal subsidies might exist to support your recruiting efforts and how to take advantage of those. And now, new legislation like Secure 2.0, the CARES Act, there's evolving legislation now that gives tax benefits to employers, to the borrowers, to allow them tax-free benefits. So it's a growing space, and I pivoted to start working with employers, which then led me to join the SavvyFi team.
Yeah. It's been fun following your journey and appreciate the support you've provided to those clinicians. So Yavi, your background in fintech and entrepreneurship, very impressive with what you've done. What drew you to collaborate with SavvyFi, and then maybe what surprised you most in working in that financial wellness space?
Yeah, I appreciate the kind words. So a little bit about me. I was a financial advisor for almost a decade. I sold that practice several years back. I consulted for one of the large employee benefits shops nationwide. And it was actually interesting how I got connected to SavvyFi. So like a good consultant, I had a meeting with a client and they were like, hey, we need 529 plans. And I said, yeah, sure, we'll figure it out. And I walked out of the meeting. I was like, I have no idea how we're going to do this. So which led me to meeting the two co-founders of SavvyFi. They happened to be here in Nashville with me. It took about 4.5 years between me meeting them, building a relationship, et cetera, and them asking me to come on board. to spearhead sales growth, et cetera. And what was interesting to me, it was really kind of the perfect situation because when you say entrepreneurship, what that really means is I'm a bad employee, right? Like I like being a cowboy in a lot of different ways, and spending time in startups and fintechs and things like that. Like it's more forward thinking, more creative. You can pivot pretty quickly. You don't need, not that there's anything wrong with having a committee, but you don't need a committee. You can more so just sit down with the CEO and the other founder and say, hey, what do you guys think about this? And it's super interesting because over the years being a financial advisor, I mean, I got to see people, I told people all the time, like I basically get to see you naked financially, right? Like I get to see everything. And it was definitely interesting over the years seeing those student loan balances become bigger and bigger, aggressively bigger, exponentially bigger. And I'm not a rocket scientist. I went to the University of Tennessee. I promise I'm not that smart, but I do remember exponents and how that works. And it's a staggeringly terrifying thing to think about. So yeah, it's been really fun to work in this space, to get creative. I think the thing that's caught me maybe most by surprise is employers either get it or they're stuck in 1975, and there's no in between. And that's quite frankly shocking.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's interesting you say that, Yavi. A lot of times we're kindred spirits in that way in terms of the entrepreneurship, because I was perceived as a disruptor going into schools and talking about student loan best practices that differed from what the financial aid offices or student affairs was saying. And they were stuck in 1975 as legislation was evolving. They were doing it the old way. And even as an advocate, I got a lot of pushback initially. I get it. Yep.
Yeah. I will say for the record that 1975 was a very good year. So, for our listeners who are unfamiliar with SavvyFi, what exactly does the platform do? How does an employer, engage in that? And then how is it different from the traditional loan assistance that employers have been providing? Or I know, Yavi, with your background in the 529 savings tools, give us a little bit of education on that.
Fundamentally, SavvyFi it's a creative compensation platform is how we go to market. So we do have a SaaS offering, but the SaaS offering is not what's sold. So if I sit down with somebody, a prospect or a client, like I'm not going through a demo or an extensive demo at least, because that's not the sales pitch. What we're really trying to do is we're trying to maximize existing dollars that already are there within the budget for recruiting and retention. And we're trying to maximize those in the most tax efficient manner possible, utilizing Section 127, Secure 2.0, just all these laws that are already in place that are incredibly impactful to the employee and the employer. But if you're just going to generally do them as an HR team or a recruiting team, it's it's a high lift. And where we come in is we help design, we help consult on it. But then we also, where the SaaS piece comes into play, is we have the platform in place for it to be a no-lift operation for the folks within the organization that need to actually implement it.
Right. And then do they own that, or they just continue to be clients and you guys help maintain the platform and things like that for them?
Yeah, they just continue to be clients. So whether it's, and then the way we go to market is we basically bundle all of our offerings, whether it's student loan contributions, whether it's tuition reimbursement, whether it's retirement plan matching, whether it's 529, we open it up to every single employer that's a client of ours. Even if they don't want to offer all of it, we basically say like, hey, that's fine, no problem, but understand it's there. And we manage it, we help them communicate, we help them enroll folks, and we handle, somebody has a problem with their 529, they're not calling HR, they're calling SavvyFi.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I know whenever I've hosted different student loan, informational sessions for residents and fellows, we found our greatest impact were actually medical students. And I'm curious, as you tailor the solution for these individuals, where should they be looking during their training? Where could recruiters then use that as kind of a recruitment tool to say, let us help you because we have this type of partnership?
Right. So actually, Jason, I'll let you piggyback after I answer. But I think the most impactful place there is even just helping folks understand what they have accessible to them. So in the traditional SavvyFi sense, building out a comp structure, I'll give you an example. We have a client who primarily, they have rural clinics throughout the Southeast, right? And they have one practitioner per clinic. And it's not super easy to convince somebody to go live in Tullahoma, Tennessee, right?
I don't know there, but I don't think I want to live there.
Unless you like whiskey, it's not too far.
So Jack Daniels is based just west of there. But I'm making fun of Tullahoma because that's where my wife's family lives. Anyway, it's not easy to recruit somebody there, and especially if it's a more rural clinic, you have one practitioner. If that practitioner leaves, guess what? You're closing down the clinic. Okay, what just happened to ROI? Not just ROI, but now you've got all these other folks who work in the clinic who aren't working. Maybe they're hourly, etc. So there, we're doing strategic things such as tying sign-on bonuses to student loan contributions, vesting them out over 4 years.
Okay.
And those can, through Section 127, can be tax-free to the employee and the employer. We all know how heavily bonuses are taxed. Boom. Now we see an immediate impact. So that's on the back end, but so for recruiting, once you implement the plan, but when you're even talking about beforehand, something like public service loan forgiveness, which is where Jason is our oracle. Even being able to just guide them and help them understand, like, hey, here's what's possible.
Absolutely. I'll piggyback on that. I think understanding how much student loan debt someone has is critical to having that discussion. All physicians, you graduate from medical school, you're going to go through residency and fellowship. Unless you have some external source of income, you are paying practically nothing on your student loans during training, and your balance is actually growing. So all physicians reach a fork in the road, if you will, which is the transition to practice. 90+% of residency programs they're nonprofits. They qualify for PSLF. So most doctors are doing 4 years plus towards PSLF, whether they know it or are pursuing that intentionally or not. So the fork in the road becomes, if you're a for-profit organization, you're giving up the PSLF journey. So what student loan benefits? How can we access new legislation like 127 or 108F to provide direct student loan payments? Because there will be no government fallback. There will be no loan forgiveness available. And then some of these state medical schools, the average borrowing, it's still a lot of money, but is $155,000. I've gone to the Caribbean medical schools for many years and seen $500K plus. Some would be the average for a group I met with that day. And so those people are probably going to more be looking for PSLF after 10 years, and they'll be bummed if they go to a for-profit residency. And as I talk to more recruiters over the years, it feels like you guys are also trying to get into medical schools or talk to physicians earlier while they're in medical school. And so understanding that part of their profile would be critical to giving them advice or finding out who's maybe lower hanging fruit in terms of loan forgiveness potential, or has lower student loan debt, and that's not so much a consideration from them. It's helpful to understand that and gather that data if you're, as a recruiter or using recruiting tools.
Right. So, as folks are looking to kind of have the leg up on their competition, I know I've been in health systems where I was the for-profit in town, and the guy next door was a not-for-profit. And so figuring out what that message looks like, and the big thing comes down typically to the PSLF and access to that, potentially maybe then it's, immigration assistance, but the first thing that comes up is really financial. So, how do the employers sponsored, those contributions work within your platform? And then, how do you help folks who are on either side of that tax-paying versus non-tax-paying employment status, to determine their ROI from a retention standpoint? For me, it was something, because we would often renew within their contract renewal after 3 years, we would renew our assistants, our financial assistants, continue to help them with their green card, whatever it was we initially had signed up for. Is that the type of ROI that HCOs should be looking for, or is it something else from a retention standpoint?
From a retention and ROI standpoint, there's basically the for-profit, nonprofit, and then there's the only not-for-profit, right, which is the PSLF piece. So the first portion of this applies to everybody. So according to Paycor, 86% of employees would at least stay with their employer for 5 years if they had some sort of student loan support. Okay, seems high when I first heard that, until I started thinking about the fact that boomers are retiring. People don't realize this, but millennials are by far, and it's not even close, the largest generation ever. People always talk about boomers. Right. That's not true. Millennials are bigger. substantially. And then Gen Z is aggressively coming into the marketplace. So to think about what a millennial is anybody born between 1980 and 1995, right?
Okay.
So we're talking about, what is that, 45 to 30? I don't know about you guys, but basic math, 30, lots of physicians coming out of residency, right? And maybe they're going to a fellowship or something after that, but they're coming to the workforce, and then Gen Z is coming into that. So if you think you can just kind of ignore this, I don't know what to tell you. Like it's becoming more and more relevant in that space. And then Thickworth Benefits actually did some research as well and found that it was a 20 to 40% lower turnover within organizations who provided some sort of student loan support. Right? So the ROI itself is not rocket science once we can figure out within an organization what is the cost of turnover.
Sure.
And how many people do you need to keep on the books, not turning over, to just cover whatever you're paying out in student loan support, which again, it's not like, it's also a tax benefit to you as an organization.
Right.
So there's also the ROI there. So that works for quite frankly anybody. And then on the PSLF side, that's more so where Jason can share.
Yeah, I mean, the statistics or the proof is out there now that offering a student loan benefit improves both recruiting and retention. The statistics I've seen are somewhere between 25 and 35%, like you said. And I believe that that's a general offering some kind of student loan benefit. It may be monthly payment and get as much tax benefit as you can out of that. There's two ways to do that. Section 127 limits you to a little over $5,000 a year. 108F might allow you to target even, harder to fill roles with targeted loan repayment that exceeds that number. So any kind of student loan benefit, be it helping me with PSLF navigation to making direct payments and getting as much tax benefit out of that as we can. We've seen now the impact on recruiting and retention is being reported as 25 to 35%, whether it's what Yavi was speaking about or PSLF support. The nice thing about that, and really you had mentioned, Yavi, a lot of this is already budgeted for hospital, like student loan retirement match. They're prepared to make matching contributions. It's already in the budget. Any nonprofit is obviously going to want to try to maximize the federal subsidy because the federal loan forgiveness, because it serves as a subsidy to your comp, and it's a low lift, low cost, just to make sure that people optimize that. But across the board, benefits are improving recruiting and retention by, roughly 30% now. Those stats are out.
Could I chime in on something real quick before we move on to the next topic? I just want to clarify what the student loan retirement plan matching is, because a lot of people are not familiar with it.
Yeah, Yavi, if you would, you mentioned Secure 2.0 and Section 127 as legislation. I think both of those things would be helpful to explain.
Yeah. So real quick, Section 127, most people are familiar with that. That's what governs tuition reimbursement and student loan contributions. So just think about pure tuition reimbursement and pure contributions to somebody's student loan. Like I am giving them money. You can do it up to $5,250 a year. It's tax-free to you and to the employer or to the employee. Secure 2.0 went into effect last year, and it's an act of laws that Congress basically implemented to improve financial wellness amongst folks. And the biggest thing pertaining to this conversation that came in was the ability for employers outside of a safe harbor. So if you're a safe harbor, it doesn't matter, but most companies are not safe harbors. It allowed for an employer to contribute into an employee's retirement plan, so 401k, 403b, et cetera, without the employee putting in their contribution. So you can give them the match without them putting in their contribution. It's carved out, passes discrimination, et cetera, as long as that employee is making a qualified student loan payment.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So what that does is you have a large segment of the population. Think about it. So I'm 35 and I was a former financial advisor. Retirement still feels like a million years away. And I actively think about it, right? Now, make yourself someone who didn't spend 10 years as a financial advisor looking at people's finances. They think of retirement as like this esoteric thing that's off in the past, and they'll get to it eventually. But the student loan bill that they get every single month, it has a due date, right? And they'll ruin your credit if you don't pay it.
Right.
So people are foregoing saving for retirement to pay off their student loans, but they're also missing out on the match and all the growth along the way. We've all seen the charts from back in the day, like if you started 22 versus 32 versus 42, whatever. Not thinking about the fact that retirement is the biggest debt you'll ever owe yourself, right? So Now you're able to knock out two birds with one stone. They're still not going to be contributing their portion, but if they're making those student loan payments, they're at least able to get the employer match and to get a leg up in retirement on the back end. So that's what we're talking about.
I don't have the source for this stat, but I've heard it from multiple sources that roughly a third of employees in a hospital do not contribute to the retirement plan, even though there's free matching money available. So this Secure 2.0 component fixes that. You verify your student loan payment and the employer can now make the contribution even though you don't.
Right.
And whether we're talking to employers or borrowers here, borrowers should be asking their employers or their future employers for this benefit if they're not. A lot of folks aren't even aware of it yet.
When did the legislation pass or go into effect?
January 24, I believe.
Okay. So it's newer in the landscape of some of the legislative changes. So how difficult is it for, let's say I am a recruiter and I want to take that information to my benefits team within HR to say, hey, did you guys know?
Right.
Because Jason, I do believe your statistics on employees contributing, it is very low. Like sometimes you just see it's abysmal when you look at that because you got a younger workforce, they're not worried about it. And they got other things to pay for, right? They got to buy eggs and milk and things like that.
They know it's free money and they just can't do it.
Right. Yeah. So how difficult is it?
So if you're going to do it yourself, here's what you need to do. You need to get a list of everybody who has student loans, and then you need to verify those student loans, which I'll let your imagination go wild on what that would look like for an individual running. So you're probably, and they probably have multiple student loans with multiple different servicers. And you need to get permission to verify those loans from them. And then you need to actually be able to monthly track, are they making those payments? Okay. We accidentally, quite frankly, have access to all of that because we built out the Section 127 platform back in 2020, which gave us access to verify student loans and payments because we were moving payments for employers. So we can do that for the HR team and track everything. So the way people actually sign up for it is they create a SavvyFi account, link all their loans, and then we get access to all the data and then just reconcile with whoever is doing their retirement plan. Now, the big caveat to that is as of right now, it's all self-certification. So you can take Scout's honor from your employees. I've yet to come across an employer who's promising money to an employee and doesn't want verification of it.
Yeah.
Right. The reality of it is, in my opinion, most TPAs and record keepers who are handling the retirement accounts, they don't have a process for this yet. So we've been teaming up with a bunch of them and handling that process because, again, it was somewhat inadvertent. We just kind of had the technology when the law went into effect and we're like, well, we can do this.
The last 4 meetings I had with HR directors, they were not aware that student loan retirement match was available. The statistics that we've dug up are that roughly 3% of employers offer it right now, and it's been around. It's not brand new, but it's new. There's limited participation or even really knowledge about it. I feel like Yavi, in our world, it's all we see on LinkedIn reports, and because of the stories we read, it pops up on our feeds, and I feel like it's everywhere. But clearly, it's not. In your world, we're definitely advocates for that.
Yeah. And I think that, again, as we're looking at entry-level workers coming in, at that point, it would be just a great tool to say, we understand you're not contributing at this time. We're going to go ahead and put in the 3% for you because you're making this other payment. So let's say they miss a month or two within a year. Are they, are you just verifying through the loan servicer that you've made payments in a year? If you miss one or you kicked out, like, is it that subjective?
So you can design the plan however you want.
Okay.
You can make it as liberal or as conservative and strict as possible. At the end of the day, I kind of go back to our core mission of maximizing the recruiting and retention dollars that are already there. I mean, what's a 401k contribution by an employer besides a retention budget? Right? You're offering it because if you don't, your employees are going to leave you because it's a standard piece of the benefits package. So just bringing in more assets into the plan, designing it however you'd like. Really, our job there is just helping design it and then help reconcile and just keep track of things. what rules and regulations the CFO wants to put in, or whoever is making the decisions on that. Like, we're pretty agnostic to that.
Did you know PracticeLink, the nation's most trusted physician recruitment resource, now offers PracticeLink Pro Marketing? PracticeLink Pro Marketing is a brand new, powerful recruitment sourcing solution built just for healthcare organizations. With custom strategies, targeted reach, and data-driven results, PracticeLink Pro Marketing helps you attract top-tier candidates and fill hard-to-reach roles faster. Ready to elevate your recruitment game? Visit PracticeLink.com and schedule your free consultation today.
I think one of the benefits that employers have and recruiters have, working with someone who can look at and kind of weigh the differences in your sign-on bonus, some of the other cash bonuses that we're seeing come in pretty high dollar amounts. I know at one point I had a $100,000 sign-on bonus plus $100,000 student loan assistance. It was a very, very rural location that we were recruiting to, but how do the financial benefits like student loan matching or 529 incentives, how do they stack up against what we still see, these very traditional student loan, financial assistance package in terms of long-term value for the provider and then the employer?
Well, I would say it's not an either or. I mean, if you got $100,000 or $200,000, what you just described, to bring somebody in, we can chop that pie up multiple different ways. There's obviously, the value of cash in hand. There's obviously the value of contributing to student loans, which might not be as sexy as cash in hand immediately. But when you're talking to somebody, if you've got a medical degree, look, math might not, or finances might not be your favorite topic on earth, but you understand math, right? We can explain like, hey, here's the interest saved over the long term, and that can become pretty appealing pretty quickly. So where it stacks up, I mean, I would say cash is number one because it's the simplest form. But I mean, again, you look at some of the trends, especially within the white collar industries, these benefits are becoming more and more the norm.
I have a specific example on this topic, which is I've talked to some systems that the $100,000, I mean, who's not going to take, lump sum money up front and get as much as they possibly can? That's not so much a retention tool for you. You want to try to split that up in the most tax efficient way and not break the budget. When I see hospitals that contribute $20,000 a year for 5 years, and it's taxable unless they go the 108F route, and they can target that to the harder to fill roles or the highly compensated folks. One of the things that happens is overlap of, let's say you're a nonprofit and you're also paying $20,000 a year for 5 years to total $100,000. If the borrower doesn't indicate to their loan servicer that the $20K coming in is a lump sum payment for my income-driven repayment plan for the next 12 months, they're going to take $20K out of the debt after taxes, or I think you get taxed on that at the end of the year usually. And then they're also going to make, if they're not informed, their income-driven repayment plan payment, and they just lost $20,000. And you do that for 5 years, you're losing that money with overlap that it's not on your radar screen, but it's on theirs. If you help them eliminate that overlap, that's a retention tool in itself, and you haven't spent an additional dollar. That's the kind of, I think, sort of consulting or advisory about an individual's specific profile that's lacking today. I don't want to overcomplicate it. We're going to pay the $20K. They can do what they want with it. Well, if they do something, if they're guided to save $100,000 over 5 years, it might behoove you to nudge them on that, right?
Yeah.
Christy, question on my end. How common is it to see that large of a number of the example? Or was that just like a very, very niche, like you needed a neurosurgeon?
I can name the hospitals that I'm thinking. I won't, but yeah, I can name the borrowers that we helped make sure about that, and the hospitals that were kind of unbending on, this is what we do. Even National Health Service Corps, they don't, we're going to pay it to the loan servicer. So I want, it's the same case. I want the National Health Service Corps money to come into, and that's not taxable, to cover your income-driven payments if you're also pursuing PSLF, because you can use both. But if you're not smart about it, there's going to be overlap. That's money you could have kept.
Yeah, to your question, this was, a pretty common package for nonprofit rural medicine primary care.
Yep.
And we do see on the PracticeLink site, we definitely have folks that don't offer nothing in student loan assistance. So my question I was going to ask is, how often are you asked to kind of roll in relocation benefit, which is also taxable, within some of the work that you guys are doing? Does that one come up?
So we wouldn't touch that.
Okay.
That would be separate from us. The only real thing that we would, the core pieces of what we do is the student loan contributions, student loan retirement plan matching, tuition reimbursement, 529s, and then PSLF, and then educational sessions around that, because a lot of employers want us to do financial educational sessions, which we'll do, for their employees.
Yeah. And I think it's fairly common, health systems will line out each thing, but ultimately it's one bucket of money in terms of, what that package looks like. Does the timing matter? We would often pay things out at the end of the first year, the second year, third year. Is that still what you're seeing as kind of a standard, retention? You're working towards getting that payment.
Yeah, I would say, again, it's just case by case. When they want to implement, again, from our standpoint, we're agnostic to it. Do you want it to be upfront? Do you want it to be at the end of the year? Do you want it to wait 6 months? Do you want it to be I've seen things such as lotteries, basically. So the CFO says, hey, we don't have a budget for X, but we got for every single employee, but we've got a budget of X that we can allocate. And then they do some sort of lottery, and, everybody's name gets put into a virtual hat, and they pull it out, and then they pay out. I've also seen, which is the most law firm thing I've ever heard in my life, but contributions based on billable hours. Okay. So every quarter at the end of it, they keep track of how many billable hours you have. They have a formula. It, corresponds to a certain amount of money, and then it gets sent to your student loan. So, you could really design it however you want.
Christy, question for you: if you're offering, say, the $20,000 a year over 5 years, is that typically paid at the beginning of each of those 5 years? It's typically paid at the end, right?
At the end.
Yeah, what the borrower would want to know is they want to align if they're also pursuing PSLF and want that 10-year loan forgiveness, and both are valuable. They'll want to align their recertification date, if the borrowers might know what I mean by that term, with the payment, so that it covers all 12 months. It's just a slight modification to strategy to be able to keep an additional, up to $20,000 a year.
Yeah.
And so we're, again, like Yavi said, we're kind of agnostic to when it's done. It's about the strategy more than the timing.
Yeah, more than the timing of it. Do you help borrowers complete the PSLF forms? I mean, obviously you ensure they're compliant, they're in the right repayment status, income-driven repayment status. Then do you help them kind of do the final? I've signed one. I've had one in my whole career that came to me.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. This is an evolving space right now. There are some vendors out there who have built the PSLF certification form into their own platforms, and they do it the old school, the 1975 way. They fax it into the Department of Education. That's our number now, Christy. Sorry. And they fax it in. In fact, now, of all of the issues with the Department of Education that we're experiencing right now, capacity issues, the SAVE plan being blocked, the one thing that's working well is the employment certification process. It now can be done at studentaid.gov, PSLF, the help tool. The borrower fills out their component. They put in the email address of the HR person, whoever the authorized signer is. That email gets there that day. They recertify. Yes, you did work 35 hours. Yes, it's these dates. And they're counting back that qualified time now in short order, less than a week in some cases. That's a marked improvement from what it's been before, and it's the technology that's allowing that. So we want borrowers certifying once a year, and we nudge them on doing that. But to take it off platform increases the likelihood of errors, and it also extends the processing time. So there's really no reason to do it any other way. So it's more about the hand-holding on guiding when should you do it. And of course, as you mentioned, the strategy around what repayment plan, that's the most critical part. The PSLF employment certification now, I know yet people are concerned that that program might be going away. It's not. I think we can discuss that if you'd like, but was created by Congress and it's not going away. What is a moving target is these income-driven plans and how to make sure that you pay the least possible to get the maximum forgiven if you're committed to public service. Employment certification is done through federal resources that are working very well now.
Yeah, that's good to hear. I know when we met, some of the statistics on the folks who were approved or actually got their loans forgiven was way at like a 2%, maybe even 5%. And I'm hearing now it's closer to 30%. Would you agree?
1 million borrowers have gotten forgiveness now, and that was 7,000 people had gotten it. That program was created 2007. They fast forwarded 10 years. No one was using income-driven plans. And, we talked about 2010 when I got into the industry. Prior to that, no one had direct Department of Education loans. So 10 years later, all these servicers were pointing the finger at them. You guys didn't tell people to consolidate. You never put them in income-driven repayment plans. That's the thing that got me into this really business. So Biden in 2021 did a retroactive PSLF fix that said, if you got misled by your servicer or thrown into a forbearance or prevented from consolidating, and all that stuff was true. Again, that's why I felt like there was a need for an advocate in the marketplace that recaptured past retroactive certification that didn't previously qualify. So we went from 7 million forgiveness success stories to over now 1 million, and I think it's almost $90 billion of loan forgiveness. Fast forward to today, most people use the income-driven plans.
Right.
Most people have direct Department of Education loans because that was nationalized 15 years ago. So now organically anyway, people are getting loan forgiveness if they meet their requirements. So you had mentioned 30% somewhere. I'm yet to see a forgiveness candidate that met all the requirements that did not get their loans forgiven. We're in a payment pause right now that will be retroactively considered once they figure out what's going on with the SAVE repayment plan. But in terms of meeting the requirements, if you've met them, I haven't seen a person get denied. Like I would say 100% of those that met the requirements are getting it. Maybe that's just our impact.
Yeah, I think it's you. I think there are other advocates out there that have really, really taken that. They've taken it to heart that these people were not given advice. They were given no advice, not even bad advice on these programs. So you touched a little bit on leveraging technology, and I know, SavvyFi operates in a tech-forward space. So how do you ensure that your platform remains both user-friendly for HR folks who may not be in it every day, and then, for those that are financially stressed, trying to figure some of these things out, like young physicians, how do you ensure your platform really is user-friendly to both sides?
Well, so one of our founders, Jeffrey, has a big philosophy around keep it simple and don't have a whole bunch of widgets that nobody actually cares about. That's really what it comes down to. Our employee platform is like 3 tabs at most. We have a strong philosophy around nobody actually cares about your random widget that you can put in via a Chrome extension. They care that their balances are going down, or in a case of a 529, their balances are going up. Mm-hmm. So we've done that very, very intentionally, hence why it's scalable. I'm not going to mention who, but one of our competitors went out of business in their 529 business because they were selling it as a SaaS platform, but really it was people moving paperwork behind the scenes. This is a very large Fortune 500 company who shuttered down that business because it was not scalable. Yeah. So we built out direct APIs with my 529. We built out direct APIs with all the servicers. Again, it's simple. There's no, you don't need to spend 40 hours a week. We're not collecting your data and selling it to somebody so they can sell ads to you, right? Right. You just need to be able to see the balance go down or the balance go up, depending on what you're doing, right? And we're going to keep it that way. And we're really not interested in making it any more complex, because any of the complex conversations we're having with HR when we're designing the plan, right? Mm-hmm. So really for HR, they can talk to us as little or as much as they want to. It can be once a year, twice a year, once a week. I've yet to have anybody take me up on that last offer. So
I have heard the term platform fatigue from borrowers and employers alike so much. I mean, one of the things that attracted me to be part of the SavvyFi bundle, because we're talking about my background is in public service loan forgiveness, student loan repayment, refinancing, all of that. And that's a component of the SavvyFi bundle, which also includes all of these other things that we're talking about: tuition reimbursement, student loan retirement match, 529 plans, all in one single, as Yavi said, easy to use platform, intentionally built that way. So that's one of the things I think I'm most excited about, is to be able to deliver all of those things in a single platform, easy to use, and avoid that platform fatigue.
Yeah. Yeah, I think most people, you can log on to your bank, you log on to, your mortgage servicer. What type of additional education do you bring into that for the employer? Are you doing webinars or individual sessions, really to help them with those long-term decisions?
So all of the above. We can do webinars, we can do them weekly, we can do them quarterly, we can do them annually, we can do individual one-on-one coaching. Obviously everything has a cost. So however complex you want to design it, we can probably make that happen. But yeah, lots of engagement with the actual employees who are interested. Mm-hmm. Honestly, the webinars have been the best, because you can have them live and then you can have them recorded and then they can be sent out.
Yeah.
And get folks to engage with it that way.
It depends on what the system wants. We've offered to come on site and do, office hours, either literally in person or have an office hours set up in a Zoom meeting that borrowers can come into and spend a couple hours just in an office hours session that's virtual. So, but certainly webinars, one-on-one support, office hours, all of that, newsletters, things like that. Different generations want information in different ways, so we want to make sure we're providing it across all platforms that it's consumed.
Yeah, we definitely see high engagement on webinars. We're working towards, establishing, the time, like the time of day, so that maybe, they've got block time and it's their lunch time or things like that. Well, we appreciate everybody's time today. To wrap us up, Jason, what's one piece of insider wisdom you hope that healthcare recruiters and leaders can take away from today's conversation about supporting their team's financial wellness?
Two specific things. I mentioned this earlier, but understanding how much student loan debt someone has and what the best route to help them eliminate that, whether it's you're getting a federal subsidy through like PSLF versus this person has less debt and it's less of a consideration for them. I think understanding that is critical to identifying how important is this to that individual, and there are different resources to address that need, from PSLF to direct monthly payments to lump sum payments. And so understanding their need there is a critical part of the process. And as you mentioned, Yavi, the statistic around 80+% of borrowers would stay with an employer for at least 5 years. PSLF has that sort of inherent retention feature within it, because you don't get the forgiveness. It's unlimited, it's tax-free, but it's at the end of 10 years. So I've talked to a lot of employers that just like, we fill out the form, we don't answer any questions. Well, maybe you should start having a resource to answer some of the questions, because people are making career decisions based on the availability of that program. And as I mentioned, the how to get there is a moving target right now, but that program has bipartisan support and is not going away. So, and then exploring these other areas of value. We always talk about life changes. This was mentioned at the ASHRA conference last week, that life changes are always opportunities to provide value and benefits. Like for the birth of a child, the 529 plans come in perfectly there. And so understanding life events also warrant action on support, such as like 529 plans, again, as an example, but understanding how to provide support in those life events as well.
Yeah, that's good. Yavi, what do you have for some wisdom for us?
Man, wisdom. Crazy. Got to pull something out of the bag. I would say the biggest thing is the reality of the situation right now is there's a lot of tension between employers and employees nationwide, for good or for bad. whatever that means with it, whichever industry you're in and whatever you're experiencing. So I have seen a very, very positive reaction from employees when employers show their humanity as an organization to those employees. Something as simple as a mother goes on maternity leave and the employer decides to fund the 529 for that child. It might not even be a big financial contribution, but as someone who has a 3-year-old, I can tell you in that moment in particular, your entire life revolves around, this little being, and a company actually doing something for you that, again, might not be a big financial commitment, but it's just such a strong emotional tie, immediately turns everything about it into something more human. So figure out a way, whether it's utilizing someone like us and implementing these benefits or whatever it may be, but show the humanity of your organization to your employees.
That's a great point. I'd also add, Christy, because I know you have some borrowers and some employers listening here. For the borrowers that are getting some guidance here or understanding that there are things that their employer could offer, but maybe doesn't, or they're not aware of it, to talk to HR and ask for this stuff. There is a lot of opportunity for growth here. We mentioned only 3% are doing student loan retirement match. Right now, only 2% of employers create employer-sponsored 529 plans for their staff. That's a huge area or opportunity for growth for employers, and it's something that borrowers should be asking for.
Yeah, I think that's great advice to wrap up with is, as you're learning about these things, you just have to ask, because it may not be, it may be unknown. It may not even be on the table yet for folks. So
you don't know what you don't know in a lot of cases. That's why education is important. And like what you're doing here, we very much appreciate the opportunity to share these ideas with you and learn from you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. On behalf of PracticeLink, I want to thank Jason and Jovica. I want to thank you for appearing on the Workforce Wisdom podcast. For our listeners, please feel free to reach out with any thoughts, insights, or questions concerning what we covered today. You can email plmedia@practicelink.com. If you're looking for financial services support, check out SavvyFi's information in our resource center at practicelink.com. My name is Christy Bray. Thank you for listening to Workforce Wisdom.